Confucius and Analects. Confucius was a Chinese great teacher and a politician of the spring and autumn period of Chinese history. His teachings and sayings were later collected by his disciples in a book known in the West as the Analects. And he was also believed to have been the author, or at least the editor, of the classic Confucian texts called the Five Classics, 知书礼义春秋. Later, some important ethical thoughts that developed from the teachings of Confucius are called Confucianism or Ruism, meaning the school of the scholars. Confucius lived between 551 and 479 BC. He was born in Lu, a province on the east coast of China. The area today is known as Shandong. While he was about 15, Confucius began acquiring a serious education, not classroom study, but active learning based on a systematic and insightful reading of ancient texts. He returned his house into school not for money, but out of his ideal to transmit to people what had been true in the past. In principle, anyone was welcome to learn history, poetry, etiquette, and ethics in Confucius' place. He educated his disciples without discriminations. That is to say, in the minds of Confucius, there should be no distinction between people. No one should be left behind in the eyes of Confucius. 有教无类. His another educational principle is 因材施教, meaning educating people according to their different talents, backgrounds, dispositions, and abilities. Confucius was later hired by the leader of Lu and held several political positions, and it was the perfect opportunity for him to test out the base of his theory on just rule. Back then, individual Chinese feudal states were often at war with each other. Later, the Prince of Lu got caught up in luxury living and was addicted to sensual pleasures, playing with beauties in the court or enjoying the listening to music. That is to say, the leader of the state of Lu began to deviate from the foundations of government. So Confucius disappointingly handed in his resignation, packed his bags, and set on his 13-year-long travel around various kingdoms. During the long journey, there were three main hardships that were faced with Confucius and his disciples. One of the events is 陈蔡绝粮. When Confucius was stuck between Chen and Cai, their provisions were exhausted, and his followers became so ill that they were unable to rise from bed. We were almost hungry to death, one of his disciples Zilu asked Confucius, seeming very angry and infuriated. Does a superior man or 君子 likewise have to endure in this way? The master said, the superior man can endure poverty or any difficulties under very bad circumstances, but the mean man or the ordinary people will do whatever he wants if he faces such a condition of extreme poverty. Here is the original text from Analects. 卫灵公问臣于孔子，孔子对曰：举斗之事，则上文之矣；军旅之事，谓之学也。明日遂醒，在臣绝粮，从者病，莫能兴。子路运见曰：君子亦有穷乎？子曰：君子固穷，小人穷斯滥矣。Duke Ling of Wei questioned Confucius about battlefield formations. Confucius replied, when it comes to matters of sacrificial vessels, I have some learning. I have never studied military affairs. The next day he departed. In Chen, the supplies of food were exhausted, and the followers felt so ill that none could rise from bed. Zilu appeared before the master with a bitter expression. May even a Junzi fall to the depths of poverty? The master said. The Junzi holds steadfast through poverty. When the small man fall into poverty, he will do anything. In Confucius, the ideal personality is Shen, translated as sage. However, sagehood is hard to attain, and so Confucius created the Junzi, gentleman, superior man, noble person, or exemplary man, who can set examples for others. In Confucius' mind, sainthood is too difficult for ordinary people to achieve, but at least we can learn to achieve the ideal of Junzi. First, Junzi literally means the son of the Lord. Zhu Xi defined Junzi as second only to the sage. So Confucius taught us that as a Junzi, we should hold the moral values in our mind all the time and show perseverance even in the face of poverty and hardship. If not, we are not different from animals. We should also know that Confucius is not merely a speaker. He teaches his disciples by his own example, better than any sermon. Chen Cai Jue Liang was a real historical event, and in that event, where Confucius was in extreme difficulties, and he could still hold a strong character under such circumstances, and used it as a good example to educate his disciples following him, right? We can also safely conclude that Confucius also had faith in the heavens well, and knew that the Tao would be transmitted to another through him. So he recalled his life, saying to his students that at 50 he was aware of the heavens well, or what he called 天命 in Chinese. We learn from Analects that Confucius summed up his different developmental stages in his life. He said, at 15, I was determined to study. At 30, I had established my character. At 40, I was no longer in doubt about the way. At 50, I understood heavens well. At 60, my ear was an obedient organ for the reception of truth. At 70, what my heart desires does not go beyond the bounds. So what is your goal in life? I would like to have a good marriage, meet my Mr. and Mrs. Right, earn a lot of money, and become famous in the world, respected by people. But why do most people set such goals in their life unlike Confucius? Because they think the goals can make us feel happy. May I ask you some questions? Are you having a good day? Why you are having a good day? Would you rather have a bad tomorrow? So that last question, like I said, is probably the easiest one for us to answer. Because we know the answer to that, don't we? We want to have a good day every day. Did anyone in the room answer, yes, I want to have a bad day on Monday? Of course not. But whether or not we have good days or bad days really depends upon how we answer the second question. Do you remember the second question? What was the second question? Why am I having a good day? Why am I having a bad day? Much of the time our minds is like a balloon in the wind, blown here and there by external circumstances. If the things don't go in our own way, we are unhappy. As long as our reasons for why we had a good day are a list of external conditions, then we are not going to have this stable happiness that we all want. So Confucius wanted us to clearly know about the true meaning of life and happiness, teaching us how to understand and practice the virtue of 仁. Basically, Confucius believed that human beings are fundamentally good and teachable, improvable, perfectible through self-cultivation and self-examination. He said that people are not very different from each other. We become different from each other because of our subsequent habits. So Confucius focuses on the cultivation of virtue and the maintenance of ethics, seeking to make us aware of the original inner nature, and the basic and the central Confucian ethical concepts and the practice is 仁. The Chinese term 仁 has been translated into English as humanity, benevolence, goodness, perfect goodness, compassion, loving kindness, showing regards for others, etc. It is a different concept to translate because it doesn't really refer to any specific type of virtue or positive endowment, but refers to an inner capacity possessed by all human beings to do good, as human beings should. This is the reason some have translated it as humanity. The Chinese character 仁 is a combination of two words, people and the number 2. So the idea is mainly associated with the philosophy of how to get along with people. Understood simply, 仁 is conscience, which is similar to the Buddhist idea of compassion. What is conscience? It indicates a subtle mental state. Western philosophers may understand it as some kind of moral consciousness or moral awareness. It is a moral guideline in our deep psyche to tell us what to do and what not to do. When we do something not good, we feel guilty. When our actions, thoughts, and words are informative to our moral awareness, we feel stably happy. And interestingly, not only Confucius but also the Indian Buddha had a similar claim. Buddha said to his disciples that it is astonishing that all the sentient beings have the Buddha nature. What is a Buddha nature? Compassionate. What is compassion? A feeling of sympathy. That is, to feel what other people feel, and to suffer what other people suffer. Here are some of the conversations where Confucius and his disciples discuss the meaning and practice of 仁. 仲弓问仁，子曰：出门如见大兵，使民如承大祭，己所不欲，勿施于人。在邦无怨，在家无怨。仲弓曰：庸虽不明，请事斯语矣。仲弓 asked about 仁. The master said, when you go out of your front gate, continue to treat each person as though receiving an honored guest. When directing the action of subordinates, so do as though officiating at a great ritual sacrifice. Do not do to others what you don't want others to do to you. Then there can be no complaint against you, whether in your state or in your household. 仲弓 said, although I'm not quick, I ask to apply myself to this. Here Confucius tells us that we should treat others fairly and always show to others an attitude of appreciation, respect, and mutual understanding. This is the practice of 仁. So Confucius said to 仲弓 that we should treat each person as if we were receiving an honored guest without any discrimination. And he continued to say that do not do to others what you don't want others to do to you. This means that we should think about other people's feelings in the opposite position. Empathy is a term we use in psychology. In Buddhism, we call it compassion. In Confucianism, we call it Ren, and the nature of Ren is already rooted in yourself. Just like what we have discussed, Ren is an inner capacity possessed by all human beings to do good. But why can't we demonstrate it all the time? Because we are already tainted with habitual sensation and gradually controlled by them. So if we want to learn to become 君子, we need to remind ourselves of the fact that we are human beings instead of animals. We have conscience. We have the sense of caring for others. We have love for others. This is also a training. We should repeatedly remind ourselves of the fact to make it become a part of our nature, so that it would be impossible for us to be involved in violence, cupidity, instability, low physical passion, or ignorance. Okay, let's move on with another quoted statement. 子贡 said, if one were to bring broad benefits to the people and be able to aid the multitudes, what would you say about him? Could you call him Ren? The master said. Why would you call this a matter of Ren? Surely this would be a sage. Yao and Shen themselves would fall short of this. The person of Ren is one who wishes himself to be settled in position, sets up others, wishing himself to have access to the moral goals, seeks to help others have the access, to be able to persist by analogy from what lies nearest by, that may be termed and formula for 人。子贡曰：如有博施于民而能济众，何如？可谓人乎？子曰：何事于人，必也圣乎？尧舜其犹病诸？夫仁者，己欲立而立人，己欲达而达人，能进取弊，可谓人之方也已。And when another disciple of him asked about Ren, Confucius explained it in another way. This is one of Confucius' educational principles, to educate people according to their different talents or abilities. While when Tzu Gong asked whether one can be called a man of Ren, if one can try to offer help to his people and bring broad benefits to them, Confucius replied that the saints in the past, like Yao Shun, could not even achieve that goal. In this sense, the idea of Ren is similar to the Buddhist concept of bodhisattva's heat. It is the heart or mind of a saint, or what Buddhism calls a bodhisattva, that wishes all the sentient beings can walk the right track and achieve the goal of sainthood. A saint or a bodhisattva is selfless. He or she is not self-centered, and he or she has a great, lofty wish or vow to help humankind to achieve the goal of becoming a 君子 or a saint as soon as he or she already successfully achieves that goal himself or herself. Now, let's have a look at this passage. This is the most often quoted dialogue in Analects. It is a dialogue between Confucius and his disciple Yan Hui about the discussion of Ren. In Analects, Yuan asked of Confucius the meaning of Ren, and Confucius said, to completely overcome selfishness and keep to priority is Ren. If for a full day you can overcome selfishness and keep to priority, everyone in the world will return to the state of Ren. Does the virtue of Ren come from oneself or from others? I should like you to list the items. The master says, do not look unless it is in accordance with priority. Do not listen unless it is in accordance with priority. Do not speak unless it is in accordance with priority. Do not move unless it is in accordance with priority. 颜渊问仁，子曰：克己复礼为仁。一日克己复礼，天下归仁焉。为人由己，而由人乎哉？颜渊曰：请问其目。子曰：非礼勿视，非礼勿听，非礼勿言，非礼勿动。At the heart of Confucius' teaching, the importance of showing regard for others was highly stressed. His discussions on the relationship between self and others indicated that virtue would enable the ruler to retain the supreme position. This passage has always provided problems for translators and commentators. In Confucius, Ren is the central virtue that is the root or foundation of all other virtues. It is not merely the virtue of self-reflection and self-retrospection. It is about the ethical idea of governing. We will expect it to acknowledge that a single person obviously does not have the power to influence the whole world, and only one in a position of political power can do so. In the case of a ruler, political power in itself cannot make the people become good. Therefore, Confucius added, if a man is correct in his own person, then there will be obedience without orders being given. For Confucius, the relations between people are not to be enforced by law, but rather set by example and accepted as necessary for the maintenance of social cohesion. If a man is led by laws and obedience to them is enforced by threats of punishment, he will try to avoid this punishment but never be ashamed of his misdemeanors. If, however, he is led by virtue and adherence to decency rules his behaviors, he will be indeed ashamed and ultimately turn to the good. 子曰：道之以政，齐之以刑，民免而无耻；道之以德，齐之以礼，有耻且格。So imagine that you are just threatened to have punishment if you do not obey the rule. If you abide by the rule but against your will, will you be happy or be sincerely convinced? Of course not. I can cite Singapore as the example. Singapore is famous for being safe with low crime rate, but you know it imposes strict laws on people. For example, chewing gum is illegal. If you are discovered chewing gum, you will get fined or be put to jail. So if you have gum, leave it at your home before you come to Singapore. Otherwise, you will be fined. This example shows that even though people will try to avoid punishment, it doesn't mean that they are sincerely convinced that it is a bad wrong behavior. So Confucius' idea is to make the virtue of Ren not come from other forces, but come from oneself. And how this could be done? A virtuous people could, with such an importance attached to the self-cultivation, it is natural for Confucius to believe that only the morally perfect man can really know what it's like to completely overcome our selfishness for a full day and be perfectly guided by this proper action. And it is he that knows the level of spiritual influence that may be brought about by the actualization of one's inner perfection. In Confucius' time, people believed that a morally perfect and intelligent man possesses the virtue of benevolence and wisdom, and therefore is qualified to serve as the model leader of a whole state to guide his subjects and make them return to the virtue of Ren. Yan Yuan then continued to ask, May I ask in further detail how this is to be brought about? Confucius said, "Do not watch what is improper. Do not listen to what is improper. Do not speak improperly and do not act improperly." Yan Yuan said, "Although I'm not so perspicacious, I will apply myself to this teaching." For Confucius, the ability to restrain oneself and overcome selfishness is the method of realizing benevolence, by which everyone in the world will return to the state of Ren. In the Analects, he said, "At 50, I understood heaven's will." For the Confucius, discerning the will of 10 and reconciling it with his own moral compass sometimes proves to be a responsible and divine mission. Confucius is convinced that his moral instruction and reform will be protected and sanctioned by the force of 10, and thus had the divine backer at last. If heaven is about to abandon this culture, those who die afterwards will not get to share in it. If heaven has not yet abandoned this culture, what can the men of Guan, Confucius' adversaries in this instance, do to me? This is very important because everyone has received the Tao, and it is the same as what Confucius transmitted. He wanted to transmit the Tao to Yan Hui, but Yan Hui died young, and later he transmitted the Tao to Zhenzi. Confucius did not claim to be a religious teacher, and his teachings do not deal with the supernatural God. However, the mysterious Tao is secretly transmitted, and few of them can understand it. The master said, "Shen, my Tao is that of an all-pervading unity." Master Zhen said, "Yes." The master went out, and the other disciples asked, "What did he mean?" Master Zhen said, "The master's Tao is nothing other than loyalty and reciprocity." 吾道一以贯之。曾子曰：“为。”子出，门人问曰：“何谓也？”曾子曰：“夫子之道，忠恕而已矣。” Master Zhen saw that others could hardly realize the heavenly secret of the Tao, so he could tell the Tao in another way, saying that the master's Tao is to be loyal and considerate. 朝闻道，夕死可矣. If one hears about Tao in the morning, he may die in the evening without regret. What is the saying that can be so precious that you may even die without regret after attaining it? So before ordinary people realize the quintessence of Tao, Confucius teaches people how to cultivate the 5 virtues first. He started, "When the superior man is, he does not try to stuff himself. At rest, he does not seek perfect comfort. He is diligent in his work and careful in speech, and avail himself to people of the Tao, and thereby corrects himself. This is a kind of person of whom you can say, he loves learning." 子曰：“君子食无求饱，居无求安，敏于事而慎于言，就有道而正焉，可谓好学也已。” In Analects, Confucius also mentioned the Tao several times. However, he didn't focus on the discussion of its mysterious or religious plane. Instead, he regards the Tao as a moral principle for our behaviors, concordant with a particular approach to life, politics, and tradition. For example, he said in Analects that great man is concerned about the Tao, not about poverty. 君子忧道不忧贫. A scholar whose mind is set on truth and who is ashamed of bad clothes and bad food is not fit to be discoursed. 是至于道，而耻恶衣恶食者，未足以义也。Do you love earning money? Yes. We think earning a lot of money can make us feel happier. We like money because we like to buy things we want with money. However, nothing is permanent. We should remember that any one of you studying in this room will one day stop breathing, turn cold and die, becoming the food for worms. I didn't mean money is not important, but we should learn how to train ourselves to be a free man, because cupidity makes us become the slave of desires, appetites, and sensual pleasures. Today, we have received the Tao and are freed from the cycle of 6 realms. It is so precious. We can't even know what will happen next moment. It is the best way to follow the steps of 老前人, 前人, and those Tao-spreading pioneers. Confucius said, "The person of Ren is not a utensil, 君子不器. The person of Ren is not a technician to be used by others to do a single job. On other level, her mind is not narrowly oriented by a specific task. The 君子 thinks broadly and does not limit himself quickly into a certain worldview and cannot easily be used as a cog in someone else's machine." 子贡 asked about the character of person of Ren. Confucius said, "First he practices what he preaches, and then he follows it." 子贡问君子，子曰：先行其言，而后从之。Now we are going to investigate the virtue of filial piety that is also highly stressed by Confucius. In Confucian philosophy, filial piety is a virtue of respect for one's parents, elders, and ancestors. To practice the virtue is also to practice Tao. So what do you do to show that you are piously respectful for your parents, doing the household chores, or studying hard at school, or earning a lot of money and bringing money home? So let's look at the passages of how Confucius taught us. 子右 asked about the meaning of filial piety. Confucius said, "Nowadays, filial piety means being able to feed your parents. But everyone does this for even horses and dogs without respect. What's the difference? So earning money and providing them with a soft life is not enough. Confucius says that animals can do it. We are different from animals because we are rational beings, so have ethical conscience in ourselves, but the problem is how to show you respect." 子曰：事父母己见，见志不从，又敬不为，劳而不怨。The master said, in serving his parents, a son may remonstrate with them, but gently. When he sees that he does not incline to follow his advice, he shows an increased degree of reverence, but does not abandon his purpose, and should they punish him, he does not allow himself to murmur. We do have experience of arguing with our parents. If we disagree with parents over some issues, or our parents' decisions or ideas are not appropriate, we can offer our suggestions, but remember to do it gently and respectfully. 子夏 asked about filial piety. Confucius said, "What is important is the expression you show in your face. You should not understand failure to mean merely the young doing physical tasks for their parents, or giving them food and wine when it is available. Now, I can confidently tell you that coming to the Holy Temple, staying here and listening to me is also a manifestation of filial piety. Staying in the temple is an easy thing. Our divinely mandated teachers said that when you stay in the holy temple, your invisible ancestors will come with you, and if you can help enlighten people because of your efforts and good dispositions and character, your ancestors can even benefit spiritual merits from you. And if you follow the steps of the divine Buddhas and respected by people, having finished your mission and duty of promising to propagate the Tao, your parents will be proud of you. This is the highest virtue. There is a group of key terms whose meaning seems to be so flexible, subtle, and disputed that it seems best to leave them untranslated, simply using transcription for them. This brand a comprehensive ethical virtue, benevolence, humaneness, goodness. The term is so problematic that many Analects passages show disciples trying to pin Confucius down on its meaning. He escapes being pained. 君子 often used to denote an ideally ethical and capable person, sometimes simply meaning a power holder, which is its original sense. Dao, a teaching or skill formula that is a key to some arena of action and arts, self-perfection, word transformation. Li, the ritual institutions of the Zhou, of which Confucius was master. The range of behaviors subject to the broad category denoted by this term ranges from political protocol to court ceremony, religious rite to village festival, daily etiquette to discipline of person conduct when alone. The Analects of Confucius v. Tian, carrying the basic meaning of sky, Tian becomes a concept of supreme deity, often translated as heaven, sometimes possessing clear anthropomorphic features, sometimes appearing more a natural force. In addition to these items, other complex key terms are rendered by very vague English words, the meaning of which can only emerge as contextual usage is noted. Virtue, a very complex concept, initially related to the notion of charisma, derived from power and gift-giving, developing into an ethical term denoting self-possession and orientation towards moral action. Pattern, Wen, devoting a relation to features of civilization that are distinctive to Zhou culture or to traditions ancestral to the Zhou. Wen can refer to declaration, written texts, and personal conduct, but most importantly, it points to the behavioral matrix underlying Zhou Li. Finally, a set of important terms can be translated with some accuracy into English, but only with the understanding that the conceptual range of the Chinese term may not match English perfectly. In some cases, alternate English translations are used: right, righteousness, yi, often a complement to ren, denoting morally correct action choices or the moral vision that allows one to make them. Loyalty, zhong, denoting not only loyalty to one's superiors or peers or to individuals, but also to others. an alignment of self with the interests of others or of the social group as a whole. Trustworthiness, faithfulness, sin, derived from the concept of promise-keeping, meaning reliability for others, but also unwavering devotion to principle. Respectfulness, attentiveness, 敬, derived from the notion of alertness and fusing the attentiveness to task characteristic of a subordinate and the respect for superiors that such attentiveness reflects. Filiality, 孝, a traditional cultural imperative, obedience to parents, raised to a subtle level of fundamental self-discipline and character building. Valor, 勇, in a feudal era marked by incessant warfare, bold warriors and adventurers were common. For Confucius, valor concerns risk-taking on behalf of ethical principle. 1.1. The master said, to study and at due times practice what one has studied. Is this not a pleasure? When friends come from distant places, is this not joy? To remain unsoured when his talents are unrecognized, is this not a 君子? 1.2. Master, you said, it is rare to find a person who is filial to his parents and respectful of his elders, yet who likes to oppose his ruling superior, and never has there been one who does not like opposing his ruler, who has raised rebellion. The 君子 works on the root. Once the root is planted, the Tao is born. Filiality and respect for elders, are these not the roots of Ren? 1.3. The master said, those of crafty words and ingratiating expression are rarely Ren. 1.4. Master then said, each day I examine myself upon 3 points. In planting for others, have I been loyal? In company with friends, have I been trustworthy? And have I practiced what has been passed on to me?